All right. So the whole idea, guys, with what Sal and I were doing, and obviously the other DMs as well, we were today's was we did a recording on how to do a sort of a good pre-call planning, and then next week is our discovery call with Chris Kane and Barbara, and then next Thursday is the executive summary. But after we were talking about it today, instead of showing you guys a video on Sal and I talking about how we did a fake pre-call planning, we just figured we would torch you a little bit less and actually just discuss pre-call planning because I think it's something that a lot of us have gotten away from, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I think in the past, pre-COVID, we would drive together in a car, at least in Jersey, and talk through, what's going on within the company and how somebody set the appointment, that type of stuff. But obviously now everything's Zoom, and I have a feeling that we're going to continue with Zoom meetings at least for the next few months, possibly through the range of the year. Who knows? But I think it's important for all of us to sort of get back onto this more strategic, pre-call planning phase before we just jump onto a discovery call. Discovery calls are hard enough to set in normal times. They're obviously very difficult to set now, and we really need to do everything we can to have the most successful discovery call that we can. So when Sal and I were having this conversation, I'd started with where do you guys go to get this information, right? You call, you set the appointment, and then what, right? You're going to get now on a Zoom either with your DM and or a more senior BPA in a lot of cases. And so what should you guys be looking for, and what should you guys be talking about? And that's sort of what we're doing today. So do you just want me to start, Sal, with like the about us type of stuff?
Yeah, but just to kind of also lay the groundwork when obviously the DMs have been meeting and we're trying to sharpen the saw, if you will, during this period of a little less activity. And one of the things we determined that would really help us all is if we can increase the level of business acumen that we each have, just to make our discovery calls and every interaction with prospects and clients a little bit more compelling to them. And also, again, you are business performance advisors in the realm of that, just that thought process. You should be prepared to just discuss business. So in thinking that through, we decided, well, what better time than in a discovery call and preparing for a discovery call. And that's kind of the genesis of how this thing all came up. So this is all in the spirit of kind of raising the level of our discovery calls so that they're meaningful and compelling to the prospect. So, Jane, with that, why don't you kind of go through how to prepare?
Yeah. So we sort of came up with just a basic company that we were going to do this with. So it was 65 employees in the pharma industry. Barbara's the CEO. Chris Kane's the CFO. And I learned a little bit about the CEO just from a couple of conversations about where they are in the business, where they're trying to take the business. They're multi-state. So I knew sort of like the basic stuff, which of course a lot of you guys get when you have that initial call to try to set up the appointment. But from there, we should really know as much as we possibly can about the company that we're going to talk to. So obviously, you can bring up the web page and go directly to the About Us section. So who is the company? How long have they been in business, which is obviously extremely important. And then what do they do, right? So what type of business are they in, that type of stuff. There's always, not always, but usually another section for the people, right? So sometimes they just give you a high level overview of the CEO and maybe the other C-level people. And in certain cases, they give you a high level overview of all the employees. And when they do that, that culture is a bigger deal to them. If they don't have that at all, maybe cultures, either it doesn't resonate with them, like it's something that they need to put on their website, or maybe it's manufacturing and it's not all that important. But when they list every employee out on the website, which you've seen, especially in like a lot of the IT firms and that type of stuff, that really means that they believe in their employees and they believe that those employees are a big portion, of the business. So The contact us, obviously, how many locations do they have? Where are they located? That's a no-brainer. Press releases are huge. Obviously, if they've just done something recently, that is something that you're definitely going to want to bring up in the discovery call. At least if it's just something generic, who knows? Do they have a blog? And then you move on to their LinkedIn pages. Maybe they have Twitter pages. That's usually at the top or the bottom of the web page that you can link in with. LinkedIn gives obviously massive amounts of information, and I would always recommend if you're meeting with a CFO, for instance, hopefully you're linking in with that person through LinkedIn, but also linking with the CEO, maybe linking with the HR person, linking with the COO. So at least maybe they accept it, maybe they don't, but you want as many people in the company knowing that you're here, that what Insperity is. So I would always recommend trying to link in with everybody else in the company, even if they're not coming to the meeting that you scheduled. Let's see, what other countries could they be in? So obviously LinkedIn can show if they have other employees outside of the United States. So what does that business, outside the U.S. look like? And what type of people do they employ over there? Careers, do they have a career page? That can be, really important. Are they hiring right now? A lot of times the career pages also list the type of benefits that they have, which could also lead into knowing, do they believe in their employees? Are they offering medical, dental, vision, life, AD&D? What's their PTO policy look like? You can get a lot of that from their career pages in a lot of cases. And then can you find out who their clients are? So what does it say about their company? Who are they trying to go after? So a lot of times they'll list their clients, who they do business with, on their website. And if they do you have other connections that could make good clients for that prospect? So those are just some basic ideas that everyone really should be thinking about and diving into a lot deeper before we go to that next level and actually talk in that discovery call.
So just to kind of add to that, I'm really thinking of 3 different areas. Obviously, number of employees is important. But Shane mentioned how long they're in business. Well, we're a different offering if it's a startup company, a company that's been around 5-6 years and maybe have been kicked in the head a little bit from a HR standpoint and have gone through some growth, maybe even have an HR presence, to a more established company that's been around for decades. We're a different call to a business that's a family-run business, and maybe they're in their 2nd or 3rd generation, and they kind of have to transform or want to transform the business, have a different mindset as it relates to employees and their role, but also their impact on growing revenue. So long in business is important of determining how you're going to approach the call and maybe some of the buzzwords you might be using. An early stage company or startup company, you could be talking about things like instant infrastructure and things along those lines. Whereas, a more established company, especially one that's got north of 30 employees, now you can start realizing that there's actually an org chart and there might be layers of management. We can have a strategic conversation about training the management or the new management or the leaders. You've all been on calls, hopefully, where we've gone into that kind of detail in terms of the impact that the mid-management can have in terms of the productivity and even the turnover within a company. In terms of the industry, obviously different things are important to different types of industries. There's going to be some industries you're going to touch on where safety is important. There's going to be some industries you're going to call on where you're going to look like an idiot if you start talking about a safety consultant. So we don't want to look like an idiot because that's not very good business performance advice, right? So you kind of have to think through a little bit what's meaningful and strategic to an organization. But also, like for the one tomorrow, and I don't have a lot of experience in pharma, but there are certain things that are unique to that industry. They're going to have PhDs. They're going to have a lab. They're going to be recruiting from major universities and from Johnsons and Johnsons and Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies. What's some of the things you can anticipate that they're struggling with because you want to ask questions that are going to make it compelling, right? So kind of pre-call planning, even the questions you're going to ask in terms of industry. And then again, who are we calling on? So, I no longer have to give credit for it because I've given credit once, but I've changed it from being with them, what's in it for me, to whiffed, what's in it for them. Yeah, Nick, I'll give you credit. So it's a different whiffed for a CFO than it is for a CEO, than it is for a COO, than it is for an HR director. You need to anticipate that to make this meaningful for them. And also you're going to get better answers. For example, you're going to get better answers in terms of financial and payroll burden, and long-term planning and the history from a CFO. You're going to get vision answers from a CEO. You're going to get people answers from a COO. From an HR director type, you're going to want to use words like, we're going to help you. You didn't go to school to handle transactions. You went to school to have a strategic impact on your organization. So, so in that vein, you're going to want to make statements and ask questions of, we're going to help you to be strategic rather than transactional, and things along those lines. Shane mentioned going through the website, the role of an employee, the culture. He even mentioned the open positions. Well, that's going to give you some insight as to maybe whether or not it's either a growth organization or an organization that might have some turnover. Each of those will change your call and make it more compelling. You want to lay this out so that they can start to see the impacts we're going to have on their company, not just on their benefits, not just on their cost structure, but what impacts they're going to have on the company. Things have changed. So you're going to want to get a kind of a sense before you go in there in terms of what are some of the potential effects on the company in this crisis. Someone that's never, I spoke to a company the other day, they always were 100% remote. So there was no impact on their employees and how they do their work. However, their clients were impacted. And as soon as I mentioned cash flow, he started speaking about the extra time and effort he has to put in terms of attempting to even collect in a non-intrusive way from his clients, because his clients are having cash flow issues. So, the more you kind of ring a business acumen bell with folks, the better off I think you might be in that. I think also what you need to agree upon when you're working with a partner is in advance how you're going to handle the call so you're not tripping all over each other. What do I mean by that? So in the video, which Shane, after we put all that time and effort in, he decided not to use about 15 minutes ago. Thanks again, Shane. One of the things we kind of role played through the end is how is the call going to be played out? I mean, typically, if you're the more junior of the two, we'll set the agenda and ask a transition question. Transition questions might be, what was it about our conversations that made you spend decide to spend some time with us in a discovery call and spend more time discussing this with it. Another one might be, what's your greatest challenge as it relates to employees? In a discovery call I just had, I changed that. And I said, so, what are some of the challenges that you're encountering with employees in this transitional economy or in this period of transition? Wow, did the eyeballs go up, because obviously it's different now, and it could very well be different. And I think what companies are struggling for and looking for some guidance on is, what kind of company are they going to be in the future? How now will their business model change? So I think those are some of the things that you also need to work out in advance so that there's a good flow, and you're not tripping over one another and making it really confusing to the prospect. And then you probably should also meet beforehand at the location or on Zoom, maybe 10 minutes beforehand, just to kind of refresh and reestablish roles and kind of get your game face on. Shane?
Yeah, that was something that I found interesting only because I'm used to sort of running more of the call than I guess what we ended up doing. We had on what you'll see next week is I was the junior BPA, Sal was the senior BPA, and so I sort of did that transitional question, and then Sal took it from there, and then I came in toward the end. For me personally, it was difficult because I'm usually running most of the call, along with my BPAs, and it gets me into a rhythm. This was more choppy to me. It was more difficult for me personally to get back in and do something of value because
You're not killing that video too, Shane.
No, that one will show. But the point being, to what Sal was getting at, talk to whoever you're partnered with, and understand what their comfort level is in splitting up different types of conversations as well. Because for me, and mainly just because it's not something I'm used to doing, it was uncomfortable for me, and it felt uncomfortable for me to jump in and ask those types of questions. Other people may be different, right? But the point being, just get with whoever you're running that call with, and get comfortable with how you'd want to split that conversation up, because it even makes it more difficult via Zoom than it does in person. In person, it is a little bit easier, but when you're doing it this way and you can't talk over each other as easy, it becomes very difficult to try to split those roles up and make it seem smooth. And the last thing sort of that I had on my mind when, Sal and I came up with some, we have these questions that we'll email out to everybody, but we decided that we were going to start out with some of these questions. It's good to have questions that you want to ask ahead of time. It's not so good when you read them, and you can see some of the time in our discovery call that we had with Barbara and Chris, that we were reading questions as opposed to making it a natural question, a natural flow. So just be careful when if you have set questions that you want to bring up in a discovery call, make sure you're not reading them. Make sure that it's something that you're fitting into the conversation. And then don't just, if you're going down one road, and you think you're coming to an end, don't go in a completely opposite direction with the next question, because again, it sort of messes up the flow of the discovery call. So sort of keep those in mind when you're transitioning from one question to the next question. Anything else, Sal?
Do we have any questions? Comments? Adding to this? Wow, Shane, we did a great job. Well, we put them all to sleep, one or the other.
Hey, it's Denny. First of all, unbelievable job by the two of you. I mean, when you have two people that have 23 years of Chairman Club experience, that means, you're a force to be reckoned with. You guys did a fantastic job on pre-call planning, and hopefully this group had taken some notes. If not, they can look at the recording, because you put in a lot of time and effort, both Sal and Shane, and appreciate that. It's truly incredible. I'm sitting here listening, and I was like, wow, this is truly classroom training and live training for me in a call. Like when I get there, the preparation that I would have completed with what you've shared would prepare me for that interaction with the prospect. So fantastic job. And I do want everybody to know on the call that they put in hours to do this. This was not a 10-minute thing that they put together. They put in multiple hours to get it to where it is today. What I would do is, when Sal, are you going to send them the questions or whatever?
Yes.
Okay. What I'd like to do is, I'd like you to take a good look at those. And I'd like you to ping back your district manager with some role-playing questions and role-playing answers, because I think it's really, really important. And I know that we have a lot of people on the call that do a heck of a good job. And then we have a lot of people that are really new, that are looking for advice like this. So Julie Halpin just emailed, do you ever use disc profile to consider approach?
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
Yep.
And the answer is 100% yes. I mean, I think the more you can identify with who you're meeting with in that discovery call, obviously you go and when especially when you meet with the CEO and they're usually a high D, you know, and I'm a high D as well, so I usually talk fast and to the point, and you know, I'm not really a babbler for the most part. You know, when I meet with an HR person that's not like that, I have to know to dial it back a little bit and not be so fast and to the point. And you'll hear a lot of people that have been doing this a long time use the term mirroring. So you really want to try to mirror the person that you're across from. So if they're talking slow and they're really calm, and well, then you can change your voice to match that, and maybe you relax a lot more in your seat. And you know, sit back, so you're not really, you know, coming across the table at them the same way that you may do with a D. So that's a great question, and yes, absolutely is the answer.
So anyone who's been on calls, well, first of all, I'm a high I, high D, so everything is fast. But usually in my calls, usually having a little bit of fun. I'm trying to really make a connection somehow, some way. I find some point of commonality with the person. When you see Kane's face in this call, there was no high I involved. Once I dropped my I and went right to D, man, he just looked like very, very, very serious in the whole thing. So a lot of it is reading it on the fly, right? Because you know what you are, you may know what your partner is, but you really don't. You've had a couple of conversations, you got a kind of sense of at least what one of the people are going to be like, but it's really difficult a lot of times. So this should be on your mind in every conversation. But you got to kind of measure that up and kind of go with your gut and do and change your communication accordingly. That was a very, very, very good question. And of course, during that, we've got like 3 other questions.
Can I ask a piggyback question to that?
Yep.
Sure.
So now that we're obviously in the COVID world and we're more on Zoom, so a lot of these conversations are happening via Zoom. Some of them people are on video, some of them they're not. So
Right.
the interaction of being able to read their face or their body language isn't there. How have you been finding the ability to address that with regards to DISC?
Well, again, the call yesterday was on Zoom. So wait till you see Kane's face. You know, actually, I think you get a better opportunity to read facial language, not body language as much, but facial language on Zoom. Because listen, I've never gotten. Look at Shane's face right now. I never get that close to anybody. I don't even need to put my glasses on, and I could at least smiling. Make note. So it's a little bit more difficult, but it's definitely something that you can kind of read. But you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it in their reaction to your questions. You're gonna get it. You're gonna see them shuffling in their seat if you're taking too long to make a point. So you can make certain generalizations from that. So
Yeah, Lisa, if they're not on video, obviously you can't, right? There's no way to do it, but so you have to sort of listen to what their voice is doing when you ask them questions. And what that means is you actually have to stop a lot more often and ask them questions. Even it can be, you know, does that make sense, right? You always want to, like, you know, every time you come to some type of end, just say, does that make sense to you? You know, do you want any more clarification on that? So now you're asking them a question, and then you can start to try to hear what they're saying. And if it's just no, then you usually know that's probably a D, and they're trying to get you to go faster. They don't want to ask any questions. They just want you to get to the point. But also you could, you know, if they're doing that, you know, you can stop and just say, look, I don't want to bore you. You know, is this, are you not really interested in what we're talking about, or do I need to change the subject into something that is on your mind that I'm not bringing up? You know, so it's really difficult to do when you're not seeing them, but you're just going to have to pause a lot more and ask them a lot more questions.
And Shane just shifted from business acumen training to sales training. The fine art of the trial close. Does that make sense? How does that sound? You know, heck, we should be doing that face-to-face, Zoom, conference call, phone conversations, as much as is possible. One, we talk too much. I know I do. So that gets, but it also gives you an opportunity to change direction. But it also gives you an opportunity to get a little yes, because the more little yeses you get from someone, the much easier it is to take them to the big yes.
Subconscious.
Another question here posted in your discovery calls post-COVID. What have you seen the biggest issue for folks? Is it employee issues in returning to the workplace, liability, et cetera? We're so used to benefits being a big topic. Shane, I'll go first. You go next. I have seen. Well, first of all, they've definitely changed. But we're living almost like it. We're living in COVID years right now, in COVID weeks and COVID months. 6 weeks ago, it was all about PPP. Now it's a little bit still on that. Is so what's gonna constitute forgiveness versus it being a 1% loan. But right now, especially in the last week or so, folks are really trying to figure out how it is in advance that they're going to start bringing people back into a workplace. Paul Salvati is the biggest visionary you'll ever have the opportunity to follow. And he gets insulted when someone says return to work, because we've been working. I know I have. But returning to the workplace is a whole different entity. So yeah, Rich, some of it is returning to the workplace. Some of it is liability. Some is, again, just think of the different mindsets of folks. Some people really don't care. They just want to get back to work. And other folks are really kind of gingerly walking around and, gee, are you ready? And kind of thing. And it's really kind of a combination of both that's going to, taking a leadership role there. But I'm leading a lot of mastermind discussions right now. I'm interacting with Vistage quite a bit because I'm trying to keep my finger on the pulse of what business owners and C-suite folks are thinking. And they're very much thinking now about a week to 2 months from now and how to strategically get back to work, but also they're thinking about transforming their business model. Does that answer your question? I got my trial closing.
Yeah, and I think, also, I think one of the big concerns from a business owner standpoint is the liability. Regardless, you can do everything right as a business owner and still end up in a lawsuit, just because one person, is complaining for whatever reason that they, that there's an issue. So I think one of the big questions is what would a small business be doing in the event that one of the employees has a problem with going back to work, like actually getting back to work in the office, and the business owner's doing everything right. They have the masks and the wipes and all the other stuff, but maybe one person believes there's too many people in the office or whatever it is. Unfortunately, we do live in a right to sue world, regardless of whether there's any case there. So, what's their backup plan if something like that were to happen? Because I know a lot of people, from at least a CEO standpoint, they're going to be concerned with that big piece of liability hanging over their shoulder here over the next 4 or 5 months.
Hey,
Shane,
David.
You had a point from Colo, but go ahead, Denny. What are you saying?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna have David jump in with his response. He heard, obviously it was a pharma company that we were going to train on. And so David shared some advice. So David, why don't you share with the group? And I think it's really good. There's a couple more points now that he's brought it down to because he heard it was a pharmaceutical company. So go ahead, David.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to have several pharmaceutical clients, and a lot of them all look the same. So usually they're smaller in size, but they usually all come from larger pharma organizations. So they always want great benefits. They're always highly comped, and a lot of the time they're institutionally held, and they also are non-revenue generating. They're phase 2, phase 3 trial type drugs. They're not bringing in any money, and they're not selling anything yet. And those CEOs and CFOs are just trying to help protect those institutions' money. So those investors' money who are backing them. So by partnering with us, we're going to obviously be able to do everything on the benefit side, keep their costs lower, long-term cost containment, but at the same time, it's the end game. So if they're going to be selling to a large pharmaceutical company, that large pharmaceutical company is going to know that they're buttoned up and they're compliant. Or on the flip side, if they decide to maybe grow this organically, they're going to know that we're going to be that instant infrastructure to help them hire 50 salespeople around the country and that they don't have to worry about. So, knowing if they're public or private, I think is always important, because that 10K, we should always be reading our own 10K as Insperity employees. It tells a lot about the company and or that prospect.
Yep. Yeah, good point. And that actually is brought up on the discovery call. We do sort of circle around that idea on if they're going to sell or go public. But to your point, we have clients that aren't pharma. We have them in just generic industries that are publicly traded, and you get the same information out of that when obviously when you go to their website and you find that out. But anytime someone's public, they're publics, right? So if something happens within the company, it's public. It will go other places. So if they end up in a bunch of lawsuits or have some giant workers' comp claim, that stuff ends up in the news. So that's something else that they can lean on us for, to keep that out of the news. They are a public organization. Nick brought up a great point. Glassdoor is another fantastic place to go for pre-call planning, to find out what the employees are saying about the company. I don't remember what we met with a company last year, and it was all negative. I mean, it was like every single employee had something to say about the company that we were about to go meet. And so it was just a really, really terribly run culture on the inside. It was one of Fred's. It was one of Fred's deals, and I think they had. And this is not made up either, but off by 10% or something. I think they had like 120% turnover in 1 year. They churned and they had like 100 employees. They just continued to churn employees in and out of the company, and they couldn't figure out why. But it's just because of the way that their culture is set up. I think they just payrolled with us May 1st, so hopefully we can help them with that issue.
Yeah, but they only had 4 employees.
Yeah, no, they had 100 employees. But anyway, the great point, Nick. The Glassdoor is a great place to go. Let's see.
Josephine was asking that. I think Josephine is asking for the role play, Shane. So maybe we could send that out to folks if they want to spend. It's about 20 minutes long. If you want to kind of go through that, Josephine, give us a thumbs up or a yes if that's what you're looking for.
Just by industry, Chelsea.
Okay.
Yeah, we can send it. We did tape it. We just didn't want to play it with you guys when we could just have this type of conversation and get a little more value out of it than just having you watch a video of Sal and I going back and forth. But yeah, we'll definitely send it out. It's only 13 minutes long, so it won't take long to go through it.
Great.
The other interesting thing, and I'm still having a hard time with it, but it's just something that I learned on watching myself on Zoom, because I did watch that video. Short of I need a haircut and a shave, when we're talking, we're usually looking at the pictures on the screen and our eyes go to different sections when the only way to get an actual connection with the person is to look directly at the camera. So keep that in mind. I still haven't figured out how to do it. My eyes go all over the place. But if you can, when you're talking directly to the prospect, if you can keep your eye in the camera, it's a lot more engaging than having your eyes sort of flip around to different parts of the screen. So it was just something that I picked up on when I watched myself on it. Ryan says it helps to drag their image under the camera. Yep, good point.
That's a good point. Okay, are there any other questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, so let's actually book some discovery calls so we can practice this.
Sounds like a good idea.
All right, let's make it happen, folks.
Yeah, next week on Tuesday we're doing the recording with Barbara and Chris, and then the following Thursday we're doing the executive summary. So in the meantime, let's go set some calls.
All right, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.